Somewhere in a vault right now sits a piece of paper that once bought 15 entire cities. Not 15 houses, 15 cities. Walls, castles, farmland, tens of thousands of people, all traded for one object you could hold in your palm. And that's not even the strangest one. Most people assume the most valuable object in history is something obvious. A crown, a diamond, a pile of gold in a king's treasury. But that's not even close. The most valuable objects in human history are almost never valuable because of what they're made of. They're valuable because of what happened around them. Mutilation, extinction, devil pacts, bribery, murder. The material is almost irrelevant. The story is the currency. Let's start in ancient China, sometime in the 8th century BCE. A man named Bian He found a raw, uncut stone in the mountains of Chu. He knew there was something extraordinary hidden inside it, so he brought it to the king. The royal jewelers took one look and called it worthless. As punishment for lying to the king, Bian He's left foot was cut off. Years later, under a new king, he tried again. Same result. His right foot was amputated too. He had no feet left, and still nobody had opened the stone. Finally, a third king ordered his own carvers to cut it open. Inside was a flawless, glowing white jade disc unlike anything anyone had ever seen. They named it after him, the He Shi Bai. That disc became so famous that centuries later, the king of the most powerful state in China offered to trade 15 fortified cities for it. Not 15 buildings, 15 complete territories, with walls, farmland, tax records, and populations. One rock for a chunk of a kingdom. The trade turned into a legendary standoff, where a diplomat threatened to smash his own skull and the jade together rather than hand it over for nothing. Eventually, the disc was carved into the imperial seal of China itself, the literal physical symbol of the right to rule. A rock that cost a man both his feet became the object that legitimized emperors for 1,000 years. But even that isn't the strangest thing humans have ever fought over. In North Africa, there was once a plant that grew in exactly one place on Earth. A narrow strip of coastline, about the size of a small county. Every attempt to farm it elsewhere failed. It simply refused to grow anywhere else. This plant, called silphium, cured fevers, flavored food, and was the most effective birth control the ancient world had ever found. Rome valued it at its weight in silver. Julius Caesar personally stored over 1,500 pounds of it in the state treasury, next to the gold. Its seed pod was shaped like a heart. Historians believe that symbol, the one you text your friends today, started as an ancient advertisement for a contraceptive plant. And then humanity did what humanity always does with something rare. It ran out. Overharvesting and grazing wiped it out until only one single stalk remained on the entire planet. That last stalk was sent to the Roman Emperor Nero. As a curiosity, he ate it. That single act finished off what may be the first plant humans ever drove to extinction. And it happened because one man was curious what 40 generations of desperate demand tasted like. Value doesn't always come from scarcity of material. Sometimes it comes from something far darker. Consider the Codex Gigas. It's the largest handwritten book that has ever survived from the medieval world. 92 centimeters tall, 75 kilograms, built from the skin of 160 animals. Legend says a monk, sentenced to be bricked alive inside a wall for breaking his vows, offered to write a book containing all human knowledge in a single night to save his life. Realizing it was impossible, he prayed to the devil instead. The book was finished by morning, and on page 290, in gratitude, the monk painted a towering portrait of Satan himself, 50 centimeters tall, staring out of the page. Forensic analysis later confirmed the entire book really was written by one single scribe, in one continuous, unbroken hand, just not in one night. Realistically, it took him 20 to 30 years of his life. When Swedish soldiers looted it from Prague in 1648, they considered it the single most valuable object in the empire's collection. Decades later, during a palace fire in Stockholm, staff threw the 75-kilogram book straight out of a window rather than let it burn. It survived the fall. The Devil's Bible has now outlived the empire that stole it. Sometimes, the most valuable object in history isn't rare, or cursed, or ancient at all. Sometimes it's a piece of metal smaller than a contact lens. In January of 1848, a carpenter named James Marshall was building a sawmill in California when he noticed a tiny yellow flake glinting in the water. It weighed less than 1/10 of a gram. That single flake triggered the California Gold Rush, sent 80,000 people racing across a continent, and ended up funding the Union Army during the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln himself credited California's gold with helping win that war. and the men who found it, ruined. Prospectors tore down their fences, slaughtered their cattle, and stole their land outright. One died, broke, and haunted. The other died penniless. The single flake that helped save a country destroyed the two men who discovered it. Today, it sits on a black velvet pillow inside the Smithsonian, the most consequential object in the building, and it's smaller than your fingernail. But if you think ruin is the strangest fate an object like this can meet, you haven't heard what happened to Empress Sixi's pearl. When the last true ruler of Imperial China died in 1908, her servants placed a massive, naturally glowing pearl inside her mouth. Ancient custom held that a luminous stone like this would keep her body from decaying in the afterlife. It sat there, undisturbed, for 20 years. Then, in 1928, a warlord named Sun Dianying, desperate to pay his own army, used military explosives to blast open her tomb. His men pried her jaw apart, tearing her mouth and throat to rip the glowing pearl free. Public outrage was so fierce that Sun's own government wanted him executed. So he did what men in his position always do. He bribed his way out, handing the multi-million-dollar pearl to the wife of the Chinese president. She reportedly had it fixed onto one of her formal high heels as a decoration and wore it to state dinners. An empress's death pearl, stolen from her rotting corpse, ended up glued to a shoe. And sometimes, an object doesn't even need violence to become priceless. Sometimes, all it takes is one person underestimating it. In 1873, a 12-year-old boy in British Guiana was digging through his uncle's old letters. He found a dirty, ugly hand-cut postage stamp, printed years earlier during a shortage because the real stamps from London never arrived. It wasn't listed in his stamp catalog, so he assumed it was junk. He sold it to a local collector for about 6 shillings, less than $1, just to buy stamps that actually looked nice. That ugly little stamp is now the single most valuable object per gram in human history. It has sold for over $8 million. One of its owners, an heir to a chemical fortune, kept it locked in a vault and later died in prison for murder. A 12-year-old threw away what would become the most expensive scrap of paper on Earth because it wasn't pretty enough for his collection. So, what actually makes something the most valuable object in human history? It's never the material. Gold is common. Jade is common. Paper and fluorite and animal skin are common. What's rare is the collision of human desperation, obsession, and consequence around a single object. A rock is worthless until a king is willing to trade a piece of his empire for it. A plant is worthless until an emperor decides to end its entire species out of curiosity. A book is worthless until a man is willing to burn 30 years of his life, or his soul, to write it. A scrap of paper is worthless until a 12-year-old's mistake turns it into the most expensive object per gram that has ever existed. Every object on this list survived the exact moment it should have been destroyed, lost, melted down, or forgotten. The jade disc should have vanished with the dynasty that carved it. The book should have burned in that palace fire. The gold flake should have been one of a billion identical flecks lost forever in a riverbed. The pearl should still be sealed inside a tomb. Instead, each one became a fixed point that an entire era of human history quietly rotated around, the single object every king, warlord, monk, or 49er was willing to risk everything for. We like to think we're the ones who decide what's valuable, but the truth is stranger than that. Value decides who we become. It has cost people their feet, their sanity, their fortunes, and in at least one case, an entire species. It has turned monks into forgers, diplomats into gamblers, and emperors into the accidental executioners of the last living thing of its kind. And somewhere out there, right now, the next object like this already exists. Nobody's fought over it yet. Nobody's bled for it. Nobody's even noticed it. It's just sitting there, ordinary and overlooked, waiting for the one moment that turns it from nothing into everything.